Hey guys, last night we saw Longzhu and KT played out in week 2 of the LCK. As far as I was concerned, it's a pretty important series just because it's going to set the tone for two what we would consider big name teams in Korea. KT because they're consistently finishing top 3, top 4, always seem to have a lot of potential, but not necessarily winning champions in the past few seasons. Um, Longzhu, obviously known for lots of big names, but lots of undercurrents of problems within that team, within the team house. I saw someone mention on Twitter that they potentially don't even talk to each other in the house. Everything's very quiet, so whatever. We can put all that innuendo and rumor aside, despite how telling it can be, and focus on the game in hand. Longzhou actually won their first game against KT in this series, quite not convincingly, but quite well. Convincing in the sense that they showed a lot of plays. They showed a lot of coordination to be able to get out that win. They rotated the map quite well. They picked their battles quite well. I actually didn't see KT getting back into it at all, which means Longzhu were finding their advantages, locking them down, and continuing to take them. And then when they probably couldn't take something, they backed right off. We're not going to get into game one though, because as good as it was for Longzhu, I thought this game was a lot more telling. There's a couple of things that happen, especially towards the end of this game, that kind of stress me out a little bit. So we'll get into it. Team comp wise, like it looks from KT, it looks very good. I mean, Caitlyn and Azir as damage dealers, I think, are good. They can get their damage down quite well, and in a couple of different ways. Caitlyn can either poke you out, or it can fight you in your face. Probably doesn't like to fight you in your face, but she can poke. She can get damage down quite quickly as well. Same with the Azir. The Azir has the potential, the ability to put sand soldiers up and do damage to you at the time. Had to check that, sorry. Get his sand soldiers up and do damage to you when you're in his face. He can kite backwards with his sand soldiers, or he can dive forward and jump on you with his sand soldiers. So they're two fairly synergistic picks. And then, as the cast has probably said, there's a particularly strong meaty front line there in the Maokai Braum. Again, both of those guys have the potential to jump forward or kite back as needed, or do something in your face. And the Elise, I guess, has a pretty well-rounded kit to make her a decent addition to his composition over, say, a Kindred who might be a little squishy, or a Gragas who probably isn't going to add anything to the core of what that composition is trying to achieve. Longzhu as well. I think they have a very mobile composition. Mobile in the set, like obviously a Victor is not mobile. Obviously a Jin is not mobile, but uh, the Echo and the Rek'Sai are both quite mobile champions. They both have a lot of movement as a part of their kits, and they can sort of move around as they need to try to lock you down, which I think is an important part of this composition. Once they lock you down, that's where the Jin and the Victor start to come into their own. Um, they start to put down their power quite convincingly from that point on. Once the Rek'Sai and the Echo lock you down, the Bard is there, I guess, as a hyper utility. Lots of lockdown, lots of slow, lots of heal, and obviously his ult is can be used quite effectively. So we'll just get into the game.
With their strong identity, but actually look to open up a game. Really force through.
We'll put that right down because the casters are good, but I guess they can't. They're broadcasting all of this live. They can't quite get into the detail that we want to look at here. We end up swapping into getting into a lane swap very early. Um, it's actually interesting to see here. There's a bit of a fight of the red buff with Hachani taking Chase's red buff. He ends up giving it back, obviously, but Hachani, there's a goal there that KT are going to try to make LZ's life difficult in this game. Um, Hachani's making his way across. You can see on the minimap now, he's making his way across just to see maybe what's happening. Um, and he flashes for it too, which obviously is a big investment into taking that. Not only does it give the Braum a bit of gold, but I guess maybe it comes back into mind games a little bit as well. We're gonna stick this to you. You're not gonna get away with just taking a red buff, which you'd think at this early part of the game it would be okay just to do so. Lots of roaming and rotation. We end up getting, like I said, getting into a bit of a lane swap here. Um, Mid lane, I guess, is kept pretty neutral. Victor and Azira both fairly farm heavy, so that's kept quite well. No sort of player there is taking an advantage over another. Expression makes his way down with the Echo. Obviously, again, Echo is very mobile, can move around the map quite quickly, doesn't have to burn a teleport or go back. Takes a couple of advantages moving down the map, so that's a good thing. We take towers here. Not too much happens here. I guess this is pretty standard for Korean League of Legends. The Jhin probably doesn't want to face against the Caitlyn in lane because the Caitlyn has a lot of poke and the Jhin is fairly immobile. You don't want to waste their Bard's mana on dropping the heals. On top of that, the Caitlyn and the Braum have a lot of dive potential, catch, lock, kill, and dive potential. And the Bard, Jhin, early at least, don't have much of an escape. So this tower gets taken. Everything's fairly calm. The thing that I'm happy to see here from LZ's point of view is they've swapped. They've taken opposite towers. They've taken the bot tower. They've taken consistent advantages moving down the map. Expression pushed Fly off the mid lane to give Coco a bit more time to farm. He then went and helped take bottom lane, and now they've turned to take Dragon. So we can see like a consistency of decision making here, which to me looks good. I mean, I think that's actually quite good to see. Quite good to see from Longzhu, a team that's been plagued with what we would call bad decisions and bad choices and problems. They haven't been performing the way they should. So that's quite good. That's quite good. LZ have sort of started taking little advantages where they can, and I think that's a really good thing. Despite the early kill to the jungler, Gold's even at this point. The lanes will just be locked down for a little bit. Everyone needs a little bit of time to scale up. What I found most interesting about this particular game and this particular composition was the fact that the Jhin was placed in here. Jhin has a very, as far as I've seen people play him, and as far as I can see him being used, I could be wrong here, Jhin has a very one-dimensional kit. He only does one thing really well, and that is start a fight. He's not particularly good at fighting. When you're in his face, he's not particularly good at fighting you like that. He doesn't want to fight you when you're in his face. He wants to step back and lock you down and maybe let the rest of his team have something to say about taking or not taking that particular fight. So it's really important to remember that this composition from Longzhu, not that it's bad, but with the Jhin, it becomes significantly more one-dimensional. Whereas if you have, for example, a Sivir, Sivir can be used to engage, used to kite, she can fight your face, she can control waves a lot easier, she can crush waves easier, she can take turrets down easier. Sivir has a lot more other advantages over the Jin. In most cases, though, not specifically in this composition. Um, Ganks from Chaser, I guess. Rek'Sai players who are proficient on Rek'Sai can tend to have a lot of success with ganking with Rek'Sai. If we just saw there, if we just saw there, let me just rewind that just for a second. Now this here is kind of where Jin wants to keep you. He wants to keep you at this distance the whole time. Yes, Caitlyn likes this distance too because she can poke you out. This is sort of like just outside of her range in general, but this is where Jin wants to keep you because see how he's using his ability at that distance? Any closer, and he needs to kite backwards to, again, make some space so he can start to get down his abilities. He can't lay down tons of damage to start with, whereas Caitlyn, she can. She can drop a Q, she can use the 90 caliber net on you, get another headshot off, continue auto attacking you quite quickly while you're kiting backwards. The Bard, I guess, is there as protection for that Jin, as this lane they would anticipate would start to evolve. But Jin at the moment can't sort of duel. He can't fight, so he wants to farm at a very, very safe distance, and that I guess is a good example of seeing that happen. Um, the Jin obviously is going to be down on CS. The Jin's going to find it hard to CS at the best of times anyway. I think. I think Jin's going to have a hard time farming against the Caitlyn anyway. Just in case you couldn't tell, I kind of don't really like the Jin pick, but I guess mechanically proficient players and players that use it in the right compositions can certainly make good use out of out of a really good Jin. We've seen it being used quite well in the past. Chaser, okay. This gank here, I guess, is fairly well communicated. Also quite telegraphed as well, so I'm not going to say that, Longzhu don't have any problems here. But it's really important that we just saw a gank on the top side from Longzhu. Fly obviously has pressed up on Coco. Coco doesn't want Fly going anywhere for a counter gank. Fly obviously has seen that and doesn't want Victor to be able to rotate top, so they sort of come together and have a bit of a fight to kind of lock each other down into lane, which I guess is a really important thing because mid lane is very neutral at the moment. So the ability for mid laners to be able to rotate top, rotate bottom, collapse somewhere is pretty even at the moment. So if they lock each other down, there's no escaping, and those tiny percentage plays can't come through. So that was really important to note. The gank didn't eventuate into anything, maybe except putting a little bit of pressure onto Someday to say, look, you've now burnt your flash. You can't move up that far in lane anymore. Otherwise, I'm going to be here to gank your ass. Which is a successful gank. A gank doesn't need to be a kill. We're not playing a solo queue here. A gank doesn't need to necessitate a kill. A gank literally just needs to help support your laner. These guys have had a bit of a scuffle, bit of a duel. They move down. KT respond very well. KT score has some pretty decent pathing here. I guess he's put himself in the right place at the right time for a lot of this game, which is a really, really positive thing for him. He's flashed forward. They've ganked. So Longzhu have ganked top. Middle have collided a little bit, so KT have taken that advantage. Right, we're going to have a numbers advantage in bot lane. Let's go. Let's try to make something happen. They don't. And I guess this is where the bodyguard protection of the Bard comes in. Score flashes forward to try to get a cocoon onto Pure or onto Emperor. Emperor, who was originally a little bit out of position, down near the brushes. Sorry, we have to wait again. I'll get better at this, I promise. So these guys have had a bit of a duel. Fly's had to back off, but then obviously the Coco is down an alt. So while Coco might have won that out and pushed Fly out, in the future he's not going to have that alt to rely on. So have a look. Emperor is down here. He's down in the middle of the lane. Remember how I said Jin doesn't have all that much escapability. He's not a particularly mobile champion. He's in the middle of a lane here, and KT are in the right place at the right time. Score is in the right place at the right time. With Mod I add the right champion as well. Elise has that sort of quick ability to lock you down with her kit, obviously. So really, really good decision here from KT. Pressure building, because Emperor is so worried about being killed. Because Score has ganked here, in the future he has to continually worry about that gank if there's no warding, no vision. So Score flashes in, wants to get his cocoon off, doesn't know whether he should go for Pure or for Emperor. The ignite from the... Is that the ignite? Hold up.
Someday he's still got his flash twist advance. Flash immediately, nice escape. Meanwhile, Coco drops a Chaos Storm onto Fly. Fly not really under.
Sorry about this.
Really defensive itemization choice.
So as soon as they see the Elise come into lane, they immediately, obviously, both start running for their lives.
Looking for that cocoon.
That's the red buff burn. Sorry. So the red buff burn is going onto the Jin, onto Emperor to slow him down. Score flashes, which is fine. Emperor takes some damage. Now, Score hasn't dropped his cocoon yet because he's still not entirely sure on who to gank. He's only sort of on his own at the moment. He could potentially be waiting for his ADC to move up into a bit more of a better position to be able to put some damage down, but because she's a Caitlyn, because Ara's playing Caitlyn, he can get damage down from a longer distance than what would otherwise be usually necessary. Before he gets the cocoon off, Pure stuns them both. Again, this is, like I said, the bodyguard dueling potential of Bard, which I think is really important in a Jin lane too. Then they both sort of escape without too much of a bother. Score misses his cocoon, and we sort of have a bit of a teleport here. Now, this is really, really interesting. This is really, really interesting. So I want you guys to sort of focus on this. Expression on Echo has teleported bottom. He's teleported into a really bad place. He knows before the teleport is down that Emperor and Hachani have had to back right off. Emperor and Pure. Emperor and Pure have had to back right off. They're back under turret. They've taken a bit of poke. They're not really in a position to be able to fight, especially with the Jin. The Jin needs a lot of setup in front of him. So definitely not set up and ready to go. Expression teleports in to the middle of three opposition players. Looks like he's going to fight. Baits out the teleport from the Maokai. The Maokai teleports in. Someday is just there. Okay. Then Expression uses his ult to then shoot back to top lane. So he's just by burning a teleport, he has freed up his lane for ages. Really, really good strategic move. Sure, you're down an ult and down a teleport, but Maokai is so slow that it looks like they wouldn't expect that anything was going to happen in that bottom lane right there. Despite burning the ult and the TP, Echo has burnt Maokai's TP, so that gets rid of a flank potential, that gets rid of extra pressure potential in the future, and he's cleared his lane too. So in the whole general scheme of things, Expression has baited out and taken advantage of a really, really good scenario here, and has forced KT's hand to respond to his teleport, and then he has he has altered back into lane and gives himself a free lane. Allows himself to take advantages in farming, take advantages on damage in tower. It's really, really good. So as this plays out, Jin gets his ult off, maybe to again bait towards that whole we're going to engage on you here, we're going to engage on you here. Ult's down, they're going to come back in, and they don't. Okay. KT then successfully turn onto the tower because they now have a 4v2. Despite the overall advantage going to Expression in the top lane, they have a 4v2 here advantage. Fly starts making his way down. Now remember, Victor has lost his ult. He used his ult just before in that short scuffle that they had in the mid lane. So when it comes to locking the Victor down so he can't go anywhere, he's got a diminished capacity to do that. He can't chunk him out because if the Victor can chunk out the Azir can't really rotate very far. But it's difficult, potentially difficult to get that down, especially on the Azir. He can use his Sand Soldiers to dodge skill shots and abilities to keep that health while he's on that rotation. Can be a really, really important way to continue to keep that health. So Longzhu have backed right off. Chase has now turned up. Smartly, obviously, because there's a disadvantage in the bottom lane. You don't want that to get too far behind. That continues on. LZ look to have pulled back off, but they're now back down on the tower. You can see on the minimap down here that they're making their way back down to the tower. We can see it there. Coco's got himself a free lane because Fly has, sillily enough, gone to make his way down to the bottom lane through the red jungle here. But then he's sort of come back up and then he's gone down again for a second time here. This time he properly commits to it though. KT have set up a really good siege here. Obviously, they can siege with the Braum Caitlyn. That to me is a wonderful siege composition. The Elise is there as a bit of a bodyguard. You want to engage on us? That's right. We can just lock you up and engage back on you here because that's in her kit. Emperor on Jin and on the Bard can definitely have a really, really good ability to sort of counter that a little bit. Probably maybe even force and engage where they want to. So this is really, really good from both teams here. This is actually a really, really good little run of play. Braum has taken so much damage up there. But in that little scuffle, the Elise has taken a lot of damage. Even though she's standing behind the Braum, Emperor, because his skill shots and damage is so linear, so like in one line, he's able to get around the Braum shield to put some damage down onto the Elise. Emperor using his, what I would assume are quite sufficient micro skills, has been able to flash forward and get the kill onto the quickly escaping Elise. Maybe Score thought he could escape with the flash on that low health behind the Braum shield, but Emperor's come up with a bit of an outplay there, which is really, really good for him. The tower's taken lots of damage because Arrow was allowed to stop, to just stand there and take tons and tons of auto hits onto the tower, auto attacks onto the tower. So it's quite low. So Longzhu are in a bit of a precarious position here, despite being ahead on gold. By this time, Fly has made his way down. I guess Score probably didn't want to take as much damage as he did, but because he did, he had to escape and he ultimately died. But that means a flash is down for the Jin. Score probably also saw Fly making his way down, so he was quite happy to sort of know that their advantage, they were going to still be able to press their advantage. Fly makes his way in, uses his ult to push Longzhu back into the face of KT. Um, Once you do that, the Braum, Caitlyn have a really that using the Braum passive, they have a really strong ability to be able to lock you down, and that's what they end up doing here. Arrow gets a ton of damage onto Emperor really quickly. Emperor, think about it this way: Emperor can't get his damage down onto a Caitlyn as good as that. So Caitlyn definitely has the advantage there. One kill there. Chaser having fairly significant tanking ability at the moment, sort of is a little bit out of position at the moment, but because Fly committed so hard to it, I think he had to know that they were going to fall at that point, that he was going to fall to the tower at that point. Maybe they tried to juggle aggro and it didn't work, but it was a little unfortunate. But that's that lockdown ability again. The Chaser was out of position for a bit, but with the Braum passive and the speed of Caitlyn autos, as well as having the Braum there, you get locked down super quick and you don't get to use your abilities to escape. So that's a power advantage to the KT bottom lane, which is really important, I think. Um, Longzhu obviously didn't want that fight, so it's quite good. KT have pushed a significant advantage there.
Longzhu also get to organize the minion wave as they'd want, push into mid. Victor doesn't have to use his time collapsing into bots. So when it comes to resources, Longzhu win because they exert less resources to pick up.
So there we see it again. Score misses a second cocoon, but that's okay. Like it's kind of a bit of a tough position for him to be in anyway to land the cocoon. So that's not such a horrible thing to have happen. But Fly's making his way in. Longzhu bunch themselves up. Fly can make his way over the wall. Flashes backwards. Emperor's divides. Pushes them into Caitlyn's face. Caitlyn takes off a number of kills. Look how quickly that passive stacked up. That's the power of the Caitlyn Braum lane. And then Pure can't do anything because he's barred. He's not tanky enough. He can't protect that turret. So he's definitely going down there. He has to back off. The map sort of neutralizes itself for a little bit here. Longzhu wants to prepare for the next dragon. Coco's just continuing to farm lane. Longzhu haven't pushed any particular advantages from that. KT haven't pushed any particular advantages off that, except for taking that bottom turret. Obviously, it's a big deal. I'm not saying it's not, but it's really important. It's really important to notice that the map neutralizes itself after this. Really important point, and I guess it's probably not that big of a deal right now. Obviously, because I've watched this game, I know how it turns out. But Caitlyn's first item, completed item, is a hurricane. Not a huge amount of damage coming out of a hurricane first build. Lots of auto attacks, which obviously synergizes well with that Braum passive. But as a Caitlyn, in my experience anyway, you want to be trying to build damage early and build crit factor quite early, damage and crit factor equally, possibly. But taking the Hurricane, you're adding auto attack speed. They're obviously ranged bolts, but it's auto attack speed and crit, which is the little bit of crit that you get out of the Hurricane. That's weird. I don't know why Arrow actually did this, but I'm going to postulate that he did this because KT saw how they were going to take their advantage wins in this game, which was through team fights that Longzhu didn't want to take. Now keep that in mind. First item, completed item on Caitlyn was a Hurricane. Keep that in mind, and we'll continue watching because it starts to make a lot more sense as we sort of make our way through the rest of this game. But she's not. But just keep in mind, she's not outputting tons and tons of damage right now, and I think that's very peculiar. Um, Jin continues to kite backwards there. Doesn't want to be able to face a Caitlyn because she's gonna with the Braum there. There's lots of potential for things to happen. Really good move from Expression there, putting the slower the potential slow stun there down for Sunday. You cannot re-engage this kiddo because we're going to take you. Um, the Caitlyn Braum lane have a lot of push potential, as you saw. Emperor was making his way back through lane quite quickly. Let's just stop it there. When they're pushed back out of lane, especially because their tower's gone, it gives KT all of the advantages when it comes to taking dragons, which is obviously a really big reason to take bot lane to pressure bot lane first, which is something I think we're going to see evolve in the meta a little bit more as this season goes on. This is a really important part for the Jin. This part of the game here. Now, what ends up happening is because they're taking the dragon, Jin gets to set up from a distance. And he's got this really sort of cheesy ultimate where he just gets to drop damage from ages away. A massive damage and big slows as well. That gets negated somewhat because the Braum's there. Again, advantage for the Braum. Longzhu knowingly took this option, but regardless, it still works out quite well. And this is what Longzhu want in their team fights. KT bunched up in a little hole like this. Emperor being able to use his slow to slow everyone down along that line there, because the Victor can Coco can put his slow, his big AoE slow, right there, so he can get down his Q and his E. Pure's coming in to continue to lock KT down. This is what a Jin wants, and this is what Longzhu want here. As this starts to play out, obviously Coco as a part of the Victor kit as well can get his ultimate down for more AoE big area damage. So the thing is, if Longzhu push KT into fighting the Victor will start to melt them. If they don't, they have to back off and back away. And despite the dragon already going down, this is where KT, Longzhu are looking to push their advantages through. CPO has tried to continue to lock someone down there. That's what his job is. The Coco's Victor can start to chase a little bit, but again, advantage to the Azir. He can kite backwards very well as a mid laner. So there's no real opportunity to chase him down. You have to burst him down before he gets the ability to do that stuff. Score out of position there. What do you do? He probably expected the team fight to continue, or maybe didn't get the call to back off, or something like that. But Longzhu get the overall advantage there. Yes, they lost the Infernal Dragon, but they've chunked KT and pushed KT away. That they can then rotate quite well to mid lane and put pressure onto that tower. They probably wanted to take it, but they couldn't chunk out KT in that fight as much as they wanted to. But again, like this is what looked positive for me for Longzhu was that they were making these decisions and flowing these decisions quite well. Maybe it's just blind luck. I don't know. I don't want to think that that's the case, but anyway. So they continue to push their advantages. Top is pushed into Longzhu, but the other lanes are sort of starting to push against KT, which is good for Longzhu. They want to be putting pressure onto KT, so they can't come out and push into the Jin or push into the Victor. And the Echo, he's sort of not a traditional top laner in a sense that he doesn't need to sit there and top and push it out. He sort of wants to get out of top lane and build his advantage in top lane, but then get out and start pushing his strength across other areas of the map. But again, yeah, coming back to that Caitlyn build, the Hurricane first, it looked really weird at this point, and Like, I know that when I watched this live, I said to myself, like, that's usually not what you put on a Caitlyn first. I know people might disagree with me, but I would not usually put a Hurricane onto a Caitlyn first, because you want to be able to duel and trade and get poke damage down, and a Hurricane doesn't really let you do that. A Hurricane's more suited to a Hurricane is more suited to controlling waves, which in this game at least it's very important. KT continuing to push their strength advantage in the bottom lane, can use that to rotate back to mid. Score does a good job of facilitating the rotations and the power that KT have, so he actually makes some really, really good decisions. Right here, though, 13, so we'll start that back here. So they rotate back. The Elise is there as, I guess, another level of bodyguard for the rotations in here. Jin's still in the bottom lane. He is definitely not in a great position, because what ends up happening is they want to siege out this mid lane. They've got the advantage. They're about to have another wave crashing in. Flyers push Coco out of lane. Chaser is here, but Chaser's playing a tanky Rek'Sai. There's not too much damage he's going to do. But with the setup from the Jin, who is in the jungle here, where KT can't see him, he gets down that long range slow. Again, very linear abilities. In a straight line, he can sort of lock someone down quite well, especially a squishy Azir. And then he opens up his ult. Now, this one line of damage down the middle here, he can do tons of damage in that line, and it pushes everyone else off, because as soon as that ult comes up, lots of crit, lots of slow, lots of damage, and it starts to sort of stress you out and disrupt your ability to move forward and kite backwards. So this is what we see set up here. Fly does a really, really good job of starting to mitigate the advantage that that this Jin ultimate and big wide in front of him Jin setup allows, pushing everyone, Chaser off him, because Chaser wants to continue that lockdown. The Bard wants to continue that lockdown. Fly does a really good job of flash ulting and using his soldiers to push his way away. Hachani, being support, puts his ult up, tries to mitigate the damage being put out. He flashes away too. So Longzhu make KT burn a lot in this little engagement here. And they're playing that off the back of a KT movement from bottom to top. Whether they anticipated that or not, everyone was in the right place at the right time, and they can continue to do to push the advantage. Because again, it makes it difficult to to move forward and engage into the fight, but then to kite away as well, because there's big slows and crits coming in. The Bard, Pure's Bard, has continual lockdown ability with the ultimate too, so lots of ults have been burnt here, lots of flashes have been burnt here, because KT know the perilousness of engaging in this team fight, and Longzhu know that if they can continue it on, they have the advantage. Again, there's that big setup, there's that big slow. Coco can get lots of damage down, chunks out these two quite well. Pure continual lockup, continual fighting, more linear damage. So we're sort of getting lockups here. You're standing here. You can get lots of angles, get Jin damage down quite well. So Longzhu knew they had the advantage there, and they continued to push it. That there is something that is telling me that they're starting to improve those bad decisions that they make, or maybe this is just intuition of a professional player, of smart Korean players, or apparently smart Korean players who can just flow off each other very well without having this set method of communication or set defined roles or systems in place or anything like that. KT are pushed right out of lane. Longzhu have the advantage. They know they have the advantage, and so they continue to push this mid tower down. It's really, really, really good to see. They're using their kits very, very well to either take advantage of particular engagements and fights, um, or to just be able to push themselves onto KT when maybe KT aren't expecting it. So the map negates itself out here. Coco goes down to bottom lane to continue to farm that so he can keep his CS up and keep his item advantage and CS advantage over Fly. So here we see big setup here, right? As soon as Fly sees the Emperor ultimate come in, he flashes and he ults, flashes and pushes himself away. Hachani mitigates damage, flashes backwards away. Longzhu want to get their damage down. Koko puts down his W and his ult to get lots of poke damage onto these guys. Doesn't sort of work out. Pure's there to drop his ult to continue the team fight. KT are keeping fairly good position here. Sort of keeping spread out, but so the Jin doesn't slow everyone and crit everyone out. But it kind of doesn't work for them. Coco gets a lot of damage down with his ultimate. Pure locks down Arrow, who can't get away and probably should have just copped that on the chin just to keep his flash. Pure, again, with an awesome stun there. I thought that was really, really great to see. Chaser taking the turret aggro there. There are lots of little things working in Longzhu's favor there. At this point, and I knew that this series would be important for Longzhu if they were going to be coming back. Lots of little things here that are telling me, wow, they're starting to make some really good decisions. They're starting to do some really good things. Things that can break down in communication in bad teams. They're actually sort of moving a little past that, which is really, really good to see. Longzhu are rotating quite well here. They've taken a bit of an advantage in mid lane. Well, a significant advantage in mid lane. So they have then rotated top. So they're doing quite a good job of moving through the jungle fairly safely, I suppose. Chaser was probably moving into no vision there. Well, not probably. He was moving into no vision there, so he didn't have the best ability to be able to see what was coming. He got chunked out a little bit. But again, Longzhu as a whole is starting to rotate off their advantages quite well. Again, this tells me that, at this point, maybe things are not so bad. They got some things working, which I think is important. Arrow going back to farm solo because he can do that quite quickly with the Hurricane. I think is important. From here, we sort of slow down a little bit. Everyone sort of backs off and resets, waiting for cooldowns and stuff like that to come off. But that little interaction right there is very indicative and telling of what the relationship between Echo and Maokai is. Echo is going to drop abilities, run around, drop around. Maokai literally can't do anything but stand there and cop it all. So, yeah, I don't like this tank meta. Thanks, Crumbs. Good video, by the way, though, honestly. Catch there from Pure. This is just continuing to push advantages. I guess there's no real strategic advantage of killing the support by wasting an ult, such an important ult too. So this is just pressing advantages. It's not such a bad thing, especially if you're going to be able to lock down a squishy target like a Caitlyn. Emperor misses all his ults though. But they get to siege up the tier 2 tower. The important thing there was that Caitlyn wasn't able to get down damage. So despite Longzhu not getting the kill, Caitlyn couldn't melt the wave that was there, that was taking that aggro, that was putting damage onto that tower. So the Caitlyn had to dodge skill shots. Not only did she had to dodge the 4 ult shots from the Jhin, she also had to dodge the slow that I can't remember what the name of the ability is. That linear slow that if he catches it, it locks you down. I really can't remember. It's really bad that I can't remember it, but I can't remember its name. I don't play much Jhin. Had to dodge a lot of skill shots. The Victor slow as well. She spent like a good 4 seconds there dodging skill shots and abilities, and not taking damage off the wave that was in front of the tower. KT, I guess, have turned that quite well and pushed Longzhu back off. They know they can't take that fight. They've just burnt a whole bunch of abilities. So they are going to turn to Dragon, which again is not a bad decision. Again, they have turned their advantage quite well. They've committed to pushing that lane out. They've got the kill on the support, which is good. Not entirely necessary, but they got it onto Coco's Victor, which was really good. They pushed KT back under their tower. Can't get too far. They've rotated back quite quickly and gone to Dragon, which is a really, really smart move. Bodyguard. This is like a more aggressive use of a Bard Q. This is again setting up quite well. Longzhu are sort of set in the video back this way. Yeah, I think that works. They're set up back this way quite well across that. I'm just trying to work this out because I'll use the mouse. That will make sense. They're set up quite well back here. Emperor can get his linear skill shots and abilities down. Chase is probably back a little further than he wants to be, but the Bard and the Coco, the Bard and the Victor here are really in a really, really good place to build on this advantage here. The Bard's got his Q down to get the 2 stuns off. Coco has his slow, his W, his Q, and his ult if he's still got it. I think he might have burnt it, but it doesn't matter. We'll see anyway. No, he's still got it. So he's going to get down tons and tons of damage here onto these two, as well as Expression coming in from the top, which, whether they were expecting that or not, he's rotated quite well. And they've got to kill, importantly, onto the Azir, so that takes away some of KT's kiting ability and engage ability. They continue to push on. They push KT out. They continue to push on to mid lane to push the advantages in. They've already pushed bot lane in. They're pushing mid lane in. They're starting to assert some dominance here. Starting to consolidate their gold advantage at least. KT are finding it difficult to find a way back into this game because Longzhu just keep pushing on top of them, pushing on top of them, pushing on top of them. And they're using their advantages really, really well. The Bard seems to be a really, really good pick for. Seems to be a really, really good pick. This is going to show it better. Really good pick for Pure. So when we pause it there, again, big setup. KT are backing off. Longzhu turn the advantage onto KT because they're backing away. KT don't necessarily at this point have that turn ability because Maokai is not hanging around. Because the Maokai can use a Twisted Advance to lock someone down. KT can turn it, delete that person, and continue on with the team fight. But because KT are running backwards, they're trying to kite backwards. They're trying to kite backwards this way. Longzhu, while they're not a hard engaged team, they can build on this advantage. And it's really, really nice to see they've started the advantage, they can see the advantage, they start to synergize really well and continue that advantage on, which I think is more important for Longzhu right now anyway. Vision for KT is very defensive at the moment. They've got both of their jungles lit up, which sort of is attributed to their worry about what's going to what pressure Longzhu are going to put onto them. The mid lane is still quite farm heavy. Still want to continue to build up power and strength in items and what have you. Longzhu obviously have a significant kill advantage here, but the gold advantage isn't 6 kills big. KT haven't done too bad a job of keeping close enough with towers and dragons. So Longzhu are not stomping on this game just yet. But it could break open because they definitely have the ability to do so. Longzhu are starting to fight together. They're using mid lane as a sort of base of direction They base everything out in the mid lane, and they can then choose to go to the top jungle, to the bottom jungle. And they can set up with the Jin, and then everyone moves in, and then the Jin rolls in later.
Oh, score. Tries to go on the trap. There's a tempered fate on to score. Chaser comes in and Johnny throws down the drop.
So this engage was quite good. I guess it was nice enough that oh, I'm gonna sneeze. It was nice enough that Longzhu tried to decide to take that pick. They invested a lot into it with the Bard ult. It sort of takes away a lot of their advantages from any later in the match. Chaser gets caught out very quickly. Maybe he sort of didn't quite factor in how much damage KT can do burst him out, especially with Score being the front line and having his cocoon there, and everyone being quite close. So Longzhu gets sort of chunked out of this fight very, very early. Choke point again isn't really conducive to a composition that requires a big setup. So already they're in a bad position. The Someday TP is much, much more aggressive and suits KT much better than Expressions does with the Echo over here. Over here, he's done nothing. He's still got full health, still nearly full mana, hasn't done a thing except teleport in. Whereas Someday, as soon as he finishes teleporting, bam, Twisted Advance straight onto a low member of KT, onto a low member of Longzhu, to continue to allow Longzhu to get. Wow, that was really bad. Someday Twisted advances forward to lock down a member of Longzhu, so KT can continue to delete that member, building their advantage on top of a Longzhu team who are already chunked out, can't fight you and duel you in your face, and continue to push their advantage on. Fly has that ability with the Azir to then, if he's sort of at that mid to far away range and he wants to move forward onto you, he has that ability to move forward or kite backwards. So there's definitely advantages there in the KT composition. And then, despite the tankiness of Expression and his kit, I'm surprised Emperor didn't take more damage. But if you can take out 4, now nearly 3 members, take out 1, nearly 2 members of Longzhu from here, you definitely have the advantages. More blue health bars than there are red ones. Pure tries to escape. They turn that very, very well, actually, to get the kill onto Fly. That takes away a lot of the fighting power from KT. And KT then try to move on to onto Emperor. They get him quite well. Again, KT had the engagement advantage, and they just built on it. So that there was a very, very telling fight. When the replay comes up of it, we'll sort of show the significance of it again. Because I think it's really, really important to understand the advantages that the KT comp have over the Longzhu comp. The Longzhu comp is good, but this isn't how they should be engaging in a fight. They're all clumped up. There's a choke point. You don't have that big wide setup and engage in front of you that the Jin wants, nor that the Victor ideally wants. Yes, the Victor likes to get damage down in a choke point because he can get more damage onto more members. That's great, but you don't just want your Victor to be doing damage. You don't have your top laner there. Your jungle is playing tank, and all he provides is a bit more CC. It's not a really, really good place for Longzhu to be in. But they've opted into it. That's the thing. That's the silly thing. And I guess this is what tilts everyone about Longzhu. They've opted into that there. They've baited that in. Whatever, man. So when that starts, Score does the smart thing to bait them out with to find them out with his Spiderling. The ult's already coming in from Pure. Locks up Score. Chaser comes in with Tunnel. Caitlyn's right there. Starts getting auto attacks down. This is not the range you want to find a Caitlyn. This is where Caitlyn's like, yes, sweet, look at this. They've engaged into a choke point. I've got a hurricane. This is a team fight. We're all here. You're about to die.
After that, the teleport is
The Braum ultimate, which I kind of forgot about, is a really important fight continuing tool. You can use it as engage, you can use it as disengage, but you can also continue a fight if you use it in a choke point right down on members of an immobile team. Guess what? Longzhu are immobile members in a choke point team. So, yeah, this is just crazy from Longzhu. I really don't understand why they've done that. They've committed too far in, so then they try backing out. That's not going to work for them because that Maokai has now teleported in and has just disrupted everything. Look at that. They were moving that way very, very nicely. And then bam, Maokai comes in and just ruined the day for them. Despite the Fly ultimate to push them all back together. They take out Fly there. That's just a nice little, confidence building thing, but essentially it's Longzhu showing plenty of problems, I would say, with that engagement there, which makes me think the rest of it maybe wasn't so great. But at this point, when especially when I was watching it live, I'm like, look, that's probably just a bit of a confidence thing. They probably thought they have it over KT. We're pushing them around. But KT, I think they're smarter than that. This team, the core of this team has been together for a lot longer than what Longzhu have. They know how to read the game. They know where their power and advantages lie and where Longzhu struggle. And I think that's why KT in that engagement, they're wholeheartedly committed to it because they have a much better knowledge and appreciation of where their power lies. Um, After team fights, as usual, we just default back and sort of reset everything a little bit. Teams sort of poke and probe and prod and see where they can try to build their advantages and continue their advantages. Um, and we sort of get a bit of a lull in everything. But yeah, definitely a fight Longzhu should not have taken. Longzhu haven't taken a tier 2 tower yet, which is important. I think they're trying to push that advantage to see if they can. They're starting to build. They have no control of the top blue jungle, which is where they chose to take a fight just a few minutes ago. Whatever. They're starting to be present in the red jungle, but that's not necessarily getting them anywhere. They're setting up in the red jungle because they want to get ready for the next dragon, which is now at this point 30 seconds away, 25 seconds away. So if they can sort of use their advantage, which is slowly dwindling and diminishing into nothing, to push KT back towards their base a little bit, it gives them more advantage to take a dragon. What Longzhu probably should have done is in the lead up to that dragon, rather than taking that fight near Baron up near the KT blue buff, was maybe build some build some vision and take some vision away from their red jungle. Maybe push the lanes in a little bit more, start to pressure tier 2 towers to make KT respond to that, so they can then turn on the dragon much easier. Big setup here. Longzhu sort of, because they mistimed everything, the way waves work in League of Legends, they'll push in, they'll come back out a little bit for you to then push them in to keep them pushing in. Longzhu sort of were in that lull where they were getting pushed back into their lanes a little bit because there was that 20-second lull where they were like, well, if we hang around too far forward, we're going to get picked off. We don't want to get picked off, so we have to back off a little bit. KT have just gone, sweet, you're backing off, we're going to Dragon because you can't stay because we'll kill you if you stay. There is a big setup here from Jin, Emperor's Jin. This is the kind of setup that he wants to keep every time. Look at that, 4-5 members into his range of his ult. That's what he wants every time. Essentially, though, he would have liked his team probably standing about there, or at least making their way in to be able to engage on someone here. KT are really smart, though. They've got their meat shields in the front and their damage dealers in the back, fairly protected from the damage slows and crits that are coming in from Jin. It protects them quite well from the dragon. The dragon's being taken here. Meat bag is in the front. Damage dealer is in the back. Jungler in there to make sure he can smite the dragon away should any engage come, which it looks like it is. So smart play from KT. Definitely sticking to their guns and their strengths of their compositions. Oh, excuse me. KT take that quite easily. Really good setup. Didn't sort of give KT an advantage to be able to say, look, we're gonna engage onto you and fuck you up from here. So it was really really good from them to sort of dissuade any of that happening. But they rotate. Longzhu rotate into top lane after they couldn't take the dragon. KT took that very very simply, I would say. So rather than having to push, um, rather than having to try to engage on that, because they were so far back, they could make their way to top much much quicker than what KT did. Good rotational policy from KT, I guess. Maybe rotational policy isn't the word, but that a good rotational decision off the back of a lost objective. Try to take another one. Where can we push our advantage? The tier 2 is probably too close to their base, and KT have a good chance of getting there. Top tower tier 2 is probably the best one to get to because there's more of an angle for more distance for KT to cover. Longzhu already halfway there, so I think at the time that was the best decision on the map they could have made. Start getting damage down onto this quite quickly. I think it was a really good decision to do that. But they had to expect that KT were going to be able to re-engage onto this very, very soon after. Their recalls back to their base. Maokai gets to disrupt a lot of teams wanting to kite away. So if you're engaging on a team fight and you're like, we're engaging on a tower, we're sieging, right? We don't want this. The Maokai's has this ability to say, no, you don't. Come back here. We're gonna fight. The Braum ultimate coming from here to slow the rest of the squishy Longzhu targets from getting away was really, really smart. Score, again, has lockdown capacity. He's coming in right behind the Braum, so as soon as the Braum puts his ult down, the Elise has a really, really great opportunity to continue to lock down a significant squishy target. Maybe not pure so much. He's aiming more for Coco and Emperor. But Arrow's coming in. Arrow's in that really awesome Caitlyn range where you can just stand there and auto attack and not be too worried about too much engagement coming towards him. KT can move forward and start to chip away at the health bars of Longzhu. Look at that. Someday has moved from down on this side of the tower to there to now there to continue to lock down KT. So Sunday's playing really, really well on Maokai. Longzhu are trying to escape. They've tried to use Pure tried to use his ult to slow KT and disrupt KT's chase, but it hasn't worked to very much effect. It's just kept the Caitlyn out of the fight for a little bit longer. But Sunday's still pushing forward really, really hard. Fly's moving forward really, really well on Azir, which obviously he needs to because that's in the kit. I think it's a thing that every pro Azir player needs to do. As long as you are trying to, scramble their way out of this fight, but KT just have this potential to, once we choose to engage on you, we're going to continue to engage on you. Someday does take a lot of damage, so he's got to zone his way back out, but Arrow is still standing there, getting off autos onto squishy targets. The defensive line of Longzhu's just been evaporated and pushed aside, and Arrow's just been able to walk up and he's just happily clicking away autos and taking damage and health bars off Longzhu to continue to press that advantage. At this point, gold is less than 1,000. There's less than 1,000 gold difference between the two. Someday recalled. got his health back, and now they've turned on to Baron. They've just taken 3 kills and chunked Longzhu very, very far out of the area that protects Baron. So there's no other option. You've taken a couple of you took the dragon. You've got pressure on other areas in the map. You don't need to press it right now. Baron's going to help you take that. Okay, look, Longzhu is set up back here. Someday he's moved from back here. He's locked down Expression. Chase is just ineffectual at this point. Maokai moves forward. Scores here to continue to lock down. Hachani is trying to start a Brawn passive so he can start getting that off because Arrow is just going to auto attack like nothing. And Fly using Azir's kit is just going to fly up into the rest of Longzhu to continue this fight on. Excuse me. Someday keeps moving forward, keeps locking down, keeps disrupting that defensive kite-away line that Longzhu want if they didn't want that engagement. It's not necessarily that effective, so that was definitely a lack in strategy in their team composition and doesn't feed into being able to turn a fight. This is why I say the Jin's very one-dimensional. He can only engage into a fight that's very, very telegraphed and set up. From here, pretty much the game is over, hey. Like, there's not much else that Longzhu can do. They end up losing a lot of confidence in the composition that they have. Maybe they're losing confidence in each other. They don't tend to opt into the fights that they want. I think a major reason for that was because the Longzhu power had significant ability to fight earlier, especially in that big setup in front of the Jin. But the KT side tend to scale into the late game a little bit better. Rek'Sai loses a lot of his power in regards to setting up picks and continuing CC. And Maokai at this point is super, super tanky, super strong, can just sort of is a big meat shield for everything that Longzhu can throw at them, as is the Braum at this stage too. They try to opt into this, but the tower's already dead. KT are scaling much, much higher into the game than what Longzhu are. Lack of reliable engage, lack of reliable sort of front line takes Longzhu's power away. Expression is doing what he should be doing on the Echo, but it's kind of a little late because despite whatever he does, there's going to be no follow-up at the end of it. And the game is pretty much over from this point. Fly misses an ultimate. Let's not go full Huni on him and start giving him shit because he's actually played his Azir very, very well into the KT composition where wait. Do we engage? Do we back off? Do we kite backwards? Do we need to disrupt something? Wait until we give you a role to do and then just do that. Which is how League of Legends should be run. This is why I like League of Legends. Papa Smithy actually said in this broadcast that there's a lot of abstract concepts in Korean League of Legends, but I can't find very much that's abstract. I might find solo queue a little abstract because people might start building funny things on Lucians that then sort of hype everyone into thinking that it's a great build and everyone uses in solo queue and they don't know what they're doing and whatever. So again, Longzhu continue. This is why I'm not quite on the shit on Longzhu boat. Despite the fact that it's just a Jin setting up his ult, like they're kind of in a position to be able to engage on a fight. Like they're not so bad. It's bad, but it's not that bad. I think silly decision making and silly behaviors behind decision making here that lost to Longzhu this game, but I thought they had a very, very significant advantage until they lost 2 team fights, one of which they opted into and one of which they probably should have kited away back from very, very much quicker. I mean, we're only 28 minutes into the game. Longzhu are high on confidence. Good first game. Good early game in this one. We've lost the team fight. Boys, let's just get back together. Let's try to build our advantages. Let's try to take this tower. They stick around for too long, and KT know where their strengths lie, know how their players get down their damage, how their players, what their abilities are in the game, and can re-engage onto Longzhu when they try to kite backwards anyway. So, yeah, I don't think it's that bad in this game anyway. I've played some pretty horrible series. But yeah, there's no follow up there because they're so far behind. Um, now, they're not behind in gold. Like Longzhou are behind in gold. They're not behind in kills, but they're behind in pressure. They're behind in their ability to engage onto a fight. So that's where this problem lies. Base is in ruins. It's a very, very quick game from KT. They waited and baited and waited and waited until they were strong enough, and they turned on this. They turned on Longzhu very well. Longzhu sort of shot themselves in the foot by taking engagements they shouldn't have. And it's not that I. This is what I mean. Like, their early engagements were really good, really telegraphed and set up quite well. But then when you get into that late game, is that just bad decision making? Is that just like a brain snapping confidence? I wonder why they do that. But they do, and they did it twice. Rather than sort of biding their time and waiting, they definitely did the wrong thing. So oh well, on Longzhu's behalf, that's just the way the cookie crumbles when you make those poor decisions. Again, like Longzhu have opted into. I know it's a dragon, but they've opted into wait, and they just ruin it. Like they opt into baiting it out in a brush, which okay, sweet, no worries. You want to do that, you can do that. But then um, Chaser ruins it by letting that skill shot off too early. That Prey Seeker does nothing. Like, what's the point of doing that? You've just ruined the bait. KT then turn on Longzhu, who then have to kite away, and that's not where their strength lies. And we see it play out. It's like a Greek tragedy, mate. Like I just don't. I don't know. I don't really like the decision making from Longzhu here. Um, I don't know whether it's through lack of communication. I don't know what it is. I guess I'm not experienced enough in it. But um, KT hang around long enough to get rid of a real pressure builder, the biggest pressure builder for in Longzhu's case, which is Coco, because he gets down the most damage most consistently and easiest. Um, so they get rid of him, and from there the game is over. There's nothing that Longzhu can do to be able to fight back. A part of their team fight winning condition was to have Coco doing lots of damage, and he's now grayed out. Emperor is grayed out. There's no one there to be able to do anything, and it's GG. KT from here go on to win the third game in a fairly convincing manner, I'll say. It again is very sort of back and forth, and I don't know. I just thought that game two was really, really telling, which is why I wanted to do this VOD review. I hope I didn't bore you too much. This is quite long, but there was lots to talk about, and to be honest, I actually enjoyed talking about it. So whether anyone watches this video or not, I don't really care. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. I really enjoy just doing this stuff and talking and thinking about it in my head. And I'm going to continue to do it whether it takes off or not. So, yeah, thanks.